demo. Here we go. So as part of this webinar, I am going to actually do a demo for you of doing a transaction to power up. Here we go. Hopefully this shares my application window properly. I'm just going to make sure you. Hey, there we go. So I've already loaded up my Peerplays account here. I put in the private key so that you do not see it prior. Here we go. And I've got 25 PPY in my account just for this test purposes here. Obviously, GPOS webinar 1 is the reason why I created this account. So this is a Peerplays wallet. You can be able to use it anytime. It's certainly available. So the GPOS panel is the first thing you see when you log in, and you just click Get Started. It takes you through this walkthrough, which is very straightforward. Explains to you what GPOS is all about. Just click Power Up. So opening balance is 0, deposit. So for Power Up, I can put in 25. I can't put in 25 because I don't have enough funds. Go with 24. There you go. So the reason I can't do that is because the fee to be able to power up. So I can't use my entire funds. And submit. You powered up successfully. That's all there is to it. So now that I've powered up, I need to be able to go and vote for participants in the network. So I can go vote. Easy peasy. So I can select a proxy right now, and if there's somebody that I trust, which you really should participate yourself, honestly. But if there's someone I trust, then I can certainly be able to put their name in here as my proxy vote, and then all the power of my 24 PPY are going to go to him in whatever he selects. I'm not interested in using a proxy. I'd rather do the voting myself. So I'll go to the witnesses, and I can see there are some witnesses available here. So in Peerplays, you can vote on as many witnesses as you want. So we vary in different different numbers. So I know the video said like something about 21 to 101. We go from 11 to 1001. So it all depends on what the people in the blockchain believe is the appropriate number to have for witnesses within the network. So you can see I'm making choices based on who has the most votes. But I actually am familiar with a lot of these operators. So I'm just selecting those because I know that they'll go to good use. So we have 100% participation in the network. That's all good. And now so I'll look at the advisors. Who do we have available here? Yeah, we'll vote for this guy, and we'll vote for this guy. We'll vote for this guy and this guy. Okay, all good. All right, so I guess we'll just publish the changes. So yeah, and then you would just finish, and you'd be done powering up.